to our next era of art known as Mannerism. So, Mannerism is a relatively short section. There are only two pieces in the entire image set that you have to know that relate to this era. So, Mannerism is a period in art that we are only focusing on Italy. It is really kind of Italy post-Renaissance, post-High Renaissance, and Raphael has died. That is seen as the official end of the High Renaissance. And this period is a period kind of playfulness. It's still a lot of religious art. So if you haven't looked at the note packet that's attached with this, take a look at it. All right, it's not long. It's only 3 pages. It's one of the shortest note packets you'll get. But you will see that the kind of understand what the key characteristics of this whole era are. So, Mannerism is art, again, from 1520 to around the year 1600. Some people say 1580 is when it ends, but it is art post-High Renaissance and really art that will be coming at the beginning of the Protestant Reformation. So, Mannerism is art that is fashionable and is the accepted style of painting and sculpture in Italy and in Spain, but again, mostly in Italy. It comes from the word the Italian word il manera, which means style. It's the style of the time. And if you think about the people that would have gravitated to this would have been your educated elites. That's who would have gravitated to this style of art. And then what are some of the differences between this and the High Renaissance? We will take a look at that and compare them. And again, I have a different set of years down there for when Mannerism started. There's some debate as to when it officially ends. So it does officially begin with the death of Raphael, but it will go, in various forms until between 1580 and 1600. So here's our chart that is really the most important part of what the difference is between the High Renaissance and Mannerism. So if you think of the way the body is positioned, High Renaissance are these rational bodies, they're balanced and they're stable. Their feet are on the ground. You can see their feet. And Mannerism, bodies might appear off balance. You have this term being used called figura serpentinata, where the figures almost wrap around like a serpent. The composition, which means just kind of the layout of all the various parts of the painting. In a High Renaissance, it's rational, it's orderly. You might have the use of a diagonal or some pyramidal composition. In Mannerism, things seem off balance and it lacks this rational quality. You might have things that are added for no reason that don't seem to make sense. In the High Renaissance, you'll probably have one single light source. You will have shading that appears to be natural. In Mannerism, the whole thing might be lit, or you might have light coming in from different angles, all on the same piece of art. So it's kind of odd. The bodies are realistic in the High Renaissance. In Mannerism, they might look real, but various parts of the bodies might be elongated, especially fingers and hands and necks and legs. And the mood overall in a High Renaissance painting might be rational and logical, and in Mannerism, they want you to think, all right? It's cultured, it's refined, and it was really artists saying that, listen, we've done the rational thing, we've done the proportional thing, let's take our high sensibilities and try to play with them and make things just a little bit different that make you think. That is what Mannerism was all about. So this is kind of seen as like the foundational Mannerist piece. Now, this is not the one that you have to know. This is by an Italian artist named Parmigiano, kind of like Parmesan cheese, and this is called Madonna with the long neck. So she looks real. The figures all look real, but there's some things that are off about this that make you think. First off, why does that baby look so long? That's that idea of stretching or elongating the forms of the body. I mean, the name of the painting literally it's the Madonna with the long neck. Her neck appears to be real, but it's longer than a real neck should be. They're making you think here. And if you look, she's got these little feet and this large, wide body, and it looks as if, she was to stand up. She wouldn't be able to support her body. So we have this man-child with this baby's head, but very long body, on this large throne-like Mary, which again, Mary is seen as the throne for which Christ sits on, and it is a break from those rational qualities of the Renaissance. You have all these figures clustered to the right, or to the left. You've got this little man in the background that is meant to be a prophet foretelling the coming of a savior, kind of going back to what Michelangelo did in the Sistine Chapel with the incorporation of Greek symbols. And then we have like this row of columns in the background that don't appear to be supporting anything. So a lot of odd qualities. It's there to make you sit, make you think, and you got those elongated bodies. We don't really see figura serpentinata yet, that serpent-like quality. I mean, you can maybe make the case that Mary's body is kind of shaped like a serpent, kind of going back and forth and quivering around. If we look here to the very balanced Raphael Sistine Madonna, that is in the shape of a pyramid, balanced, harmonious, realistic, we see a very big kind of transformation taking place in the way that this common scene is being portrayed now in the mid and late 1500s. So now to the piece that you do need to know. The notes for this are on page 3 of your note packet. I would write them in your binder. This is called The Entombment of Christ by Jacob da Pontormo. So one of the things that jumps right off the bat is that we don't really have the use of realistic color here. A lot of pastels. That's another thing that was Mannerist, the use of unrealistic color. Pontormo actually paints himself into the altarpiece that we have here. And it is the moment where Christ is about to be placed. He's off the cross, and he is going to be placed inside of his tomb. So what are the Mannerist qualities? Well, is Mary floating? Is she being held up by people? We don't know. There's no ground line. It's not rational. The way that the two figures that are holding Christ's body, they're not really holding Christ in a realistic way that would be anywhere near comfortable. It's almost like they're presenting him to the viewer. You've got one guy on his tippy toes. You've got this other guy that's wrapped around, giving us that figure as serpentinata, that twisting of the body. Christ's body itself is being kind of twisted as these two figures are looking out at the viewer. You've got these other figures that don't appear. We don't know what they're standing on. Are they standing on a rock? Are they standing on the area where Christ's cross was? And they are going to be, they just help take him off the cross. So this dramatic scene of this diagonal here of Mary going one way and Jesus going another, it is, very odd, especially the composition of the bodies. That is really what the Mannerist technique is. This is another example of a Pontormo piece over to the right, and you can kind of see the same kind of quality of wrapping of bodies, of figures that don't necessarily seem to be very realistic in terms of how they're proportioned. This is not an image that is in your image set, but it's kind of seen as another key Mannerist piece. This is by an artist named Bronzino, and I just wanted to show you what's happening here. We have Venus, goddess of love, and her son Cupid, and they're in this alleged love affair that is seen as folly because it's incest, and you've got Cupid's body like turned around, wrapped around his mother, as his mother is very awkwardly pulling an arrow out of Cupid's quiver. You've got Folly over here throwing flowers on this mythological scene. You've got Father Time over here trying to cover it up because it's a disgusting scene of a mother and a son. And then you've got this other madman back over here, which represents like the sickness of the scene. So very, very, very chaotic, very odd, should I say, and also very Mannerist. So Mannerism didn't just go into art, it also went to architecture. So the church that we are going to look at is a church called El Gesu, and it was the principal church of the Jesuit order. And the Jesuit order of priests, they were the kind of the priests that were taking control of the Counter-Reformation, which was the Catholic Church's the Counter-Reformation is when the Catholic Church essentially said, okay, people are upset with the Catholic Church. Protestants are leaving. We need to do something now to stop the hemorrhaging of members of the church. So they have a whole meeting called the Council of Trent, where they will come up with a plan to fix the church. They stop selling indulgences. That's the key one. But the Jesuit order of priests are the ones that will lead that crusade of the Counter-Reformation. And we're going to see how that really changes art in the next period of Baroque. So this is a piece of architecture, and you only have to know the facade. It is by an architect known Giacomo della Porta, and it is brick and marble on the outside. But you see the use of classical elements. We see a pediment, we see engaged columns, but it's very whimsical. It's very playful. Everything here is literally, it's not for structural purpose, it's for the enjoyment of the eye. We see the addition of these scroll-like volutes that kind of connect the lower portion of the building with the upper portion. And to me, it's very reminiscent of Petra, and how you have these very kind of whimsical classical elements that have no real purpose but just to please the eye. And that's what we're seeing here. So columns and groupings emphasize kind of this central doorway. We see these columns all kind of getting closer to each other until they culminate in that doorway right there. We have this semicircle. Below that, you have a pediment, and above that, you have a large pediment. The interior actually has no aisles. It was meant for these grand ceremonies. And when we get to Baroque art, we'll focus on actually the painting that is done on the inside ceiling of the church. So that's it for Mannerism. Pretty short. Only 2 pieces you have to know. And it is really kind of, to me, a placeholder of an artistic time period. So you have the High Renaissance, Mannerism's relatively short, and then we get into our next era, which really lasts a long time, which is the Baroque era. And that's where we're going next. So I'll see you guys then, and thanks for watching.